time a policeman was killed, well, we're going to have to see what the outcome is. We're going to have to let them investigate it, and they would have it on video that was playing.
Oh yeah.
And now everybody that was killed by a policeman, now don't get me wrong, I've seen a couple of the videos to where one person was shot in the back.
Yeah.
That's murder.
Yeah.
I don't care if a person has a badge or they don't have a badge. But if you take somebody that's 250 pounds and their own muscle weighing 6'4", if they come running at me and I got a gun on me, I'm not going to fist fight them.
No.
I wouldn't try to fist fight them.
Gotcha.
So even being a police officer, male, female, or whatever, I wouldn't try to do that. But the President of the United States, the Secretary of the State, at that time was Hillary Clinton, then the next Secretary of the State, John Kerry, and our Joe Biden, the Vice President of the United States, they would never come out against policemen being targeted. And that incites violence in itself. It tells people the President of the United States, the Secretary of State, will not even come out and speak against targeting policemen and killing them.
Right.
And it's in people's minds. Well, you can, if you don't like someone's views, don't take it out at the polling on election day. Take it out on them, and that's wrong. That's what voting booths are made for.
And that's true. It's been said before, and I've said this a lot on my shows, but we're either going to be a country that is governed by laws, or we're just going to be a group of men. We're just going to be anarchists. There's no middle ground. You can't have anarchy and have safety and have a thriving society. But yeah, they knocked the legs out from underneath the support for the police. If a police officer did make an arrest, if they did have to pull the gun, and again, that's a chilling effect.
Yeah. They had no support.
No support. As a matter of fact, the same communities that they protected, they had to know that it was on them that these communities were being burnt down, that people were being, assaulted and attacked.
Yeah.
And it's just, how do how does a person in good, I have it on my website, but I was just driving to work one day, Steve, and I'm at a stoplight by the Crossroads Mall, and I look over underneath the bridge, and this man is pulling a lady out by her neck. And they had an apparent car wreck, and something inside me would not let, I could not drive past that event without standing there for that woman, Yeah,
good. And
I prayed, and it was the Spirit of God. The guy was big, and I prayed, and I was peaceful to the guy. I left my gun in the car and locked it up, and I just felt like that could be a turning point. And so I prayed. I put it in God's hands, and I stood there by that woman's car, and he walked away. He didn't even come near me. Now, when the police arrived, he got violent again. So, I don't know. But I give that one to God, and so, maybe that's the answer. I don't know if you listen much to Steve Quayle. He gets out there on some certain things, but one thing he does say is, rebuke first, ask questions later, and
yeah.
So I don't know.
Well, there's a call to the church. It's in the Old Testament, but it was a call to God's people. He said, if my people which are called by my name. So that's itemizing exactly who he's talking about.
Right.
Will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways. He said, I'd hear from heaven and I would heal their land. So prayer is the top thing. Pray for your leaders. Pray, and when I don't care who the president was. It's Bill Clinton. It was George Bush. It was Barack Obama. It was Donald Trump. I believe in praying for the leaders. Don't attack the office of the President of the United States. Pray for your leaders. You don't have to agree with them. If you don't agree with them, you can still voice your opinion against their policies. Disagree with attacking their families, their children, their wives, their husbands, their family, their dog. I agree with praying for them. Speak out against their policies. That's good. That's democracy. Mm-hmm. If someone insults my wife and I smack them, I'm right. Where it gets dangerous is when you smack somebody over their political views. People don't realize where this country's heading if it doesn't change. If the people that's inciting violence don't learn to keep their mouth shut, and the ones that's out there causing violence don't learn to stay home, it's leading to civil war. That's where it starts.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's already chatter, Steve. People are saying things like, that's first blood. They did it. But how do you differentiate when you? I mean, I guess you can look at the crazies. I guess maybe on both sides. But how do you differentiate the average person? I mean,
I believe when a statement like first blood is made, that person needs to be locked up that made it.
Yeah, I agree. And these people, I mean, they're in just the attack of these bots, and you've seen them on Twitter. You've seen the things that they're just hate-filled, and they just are nothing but attacking people. And they program these things. And again, it's the same group of people that support the riots, support everything like that. They go to the internet and they spread this fake hate. But it's still hate nonetheless when it hits your eyes and your ears. And so, I don't know. It's
during Vietnam, a man, he was an actor. We just don't have very many actors like this today. During the Korean War, Walt Disney surrendered his studios, surrendered everything he had to the United States military. Jack Benny ran programs just for that.
Right.
During the Korean War. You don't see Hollywood don't do that. Now they protest. What was that? John Ford. John Ford, he volunteered and helped them because during the Korean War, John Ford helped and volunteered. Well, the directors don't do that anymore. Now they protest or holding up signs. During the Vietnam War, Jimmy Stewart, which was an American hero, people need to study up on him. He was an American hero. Him and Henry Fonda was a Democrat, Jimmy Stewart was a Republican, and they were best friends.
Stewart was a tailgater.
That teaches something.
Yeah.
Jimmy Stewart's stepson was killed in Vietnam. At the funeral, protesters gathered outside and protested his funeral because he was an American soldier killed in Vietnam, and they hung an American flag up and set it on fire. John Wayne, Jimmy Stewart, and Ronald Reagan walked out the front door. Now, Ronald Reagan, I think, was a great president and a great man. Uh-huh. But Ronald Reagan and Jimmy Stewart turned around and walked back in and went out the back door. John Wayne went out there through all the protesters, took that American flag down, and put the fire out.
Oh, yeah.
We need some more men like that in Hollywood. Right now, what we've got in Hollywood, not all of them, but 99.9% of them, we've got a bunch of trash in Hollywood.
And the Chinese basically own Hollywood now, and that's a whole nother problem in itself.
Yeah.
And I guess that would be a whole nother show there but yeah, I mean, and again though, it's the whole machine, the whole globalist one world order machine that it is such an intricate web of just lies and deception and evil, witchcraft and things you wouldn't even think of. I mean, who would have ever thought? Would you have ever at any point thought you would have heard of something like politicians mentioning spirit cooking? even at its low point in a presidential, battle, would you have ever thought you would have heard something like that come out in the media?
No.
I mean, and it's wickedness.
It sure is. I will possibly be critiqued being a pastor, a preacher, and not just a pastor, preacher, but a Christian, using language like in Hollywood we have a bunch of trash. But I want to clarify something. John the Baptist preached his head off. Here's how he did it. The king took his brother's wife, and he goes and he gets political. And he looks at the king and tells him what he is doing is not lawful. He made it very clear. The same John the Baptist would look, and I think it's in Matthew chapter 3, verse 7. He says, but listen to this, but when he saw many of the Pharisees and Sadducees come to his baptism, he said unto them, O generation of vipers, who hath warned you to flee the wrath to come? Bring forth therefore fruits meet worthy of repentance, and think not to say within yourselves, we have Abraham to our father. For I say unto you that God is able to raise these stones, that is able of these stones to raise up children unto Abraham. He called them a generation of vipers.
Right.
And I believe that when people muzzle their words and they try to be politically correct, if I remain silent on something, my children will embrace it.
Well, doesn't
and people realize that.
That gives over to a reprobate mind, though, doesn't it, as well?
It does. It says you would believe a lie and be damned, and that word means cursed. That means to go to hell. That means that person, that's where they would go. Didn't Apostle Paul say that if a man or angel preach any other gospel, let them be accursed from God? And he's literally saying that if an angel would even come and preach any other gospel, they would become a fallen angel, and they would be bound for hell. That word cursed from God means that's where you would wind up going, is to hell.
Right.
He's separated from God. They used harsh language in the Bible to get their point across. Could you imagine if the prophets in the Old Testament, if Moses, if the apostles, the 12 apostles that we talked about earlier, you mentioned earlier, if they muzzled their language, and I'm not talking about bad language, I'm talking about trying to be politically correct.
Right.
Well, the Bible would be completely different, wouldn't it?
Oh, well, and the thing, I think when we first met, I was maybe talking about Peter, and how Peter, he doesn't seem to me like, I guess at first, he doesn't seem to me like the type of person who muzzled himself. And when they came for Jesus, he had a sword. Yeah. And he wasn't condemned for having it. But I mean, the thing, what he did with it, that's a whole different thing. But I don't think that it's bad to say that. I think that it needs to be said, because if it's not, the only thing that people are going to hear, Steve, are the literal drum beatings of these fascist people, just like in that video.
They're not muzzling what they say.
No.
And when Donald Trump was running for president, it was almost like he was not running. It was like the American people was running, and he was the one that was trying to coach them and lead them on. And I remember this. The liberal media elects your presidents, and here's how they do it. With the polls. They had it. They was trying to get it into the voters' minds that there's no hope to go out and vote because there's no chance Donald Trump can win. There's no chance. Oh. And when people feel like that, they stay home. Donald Trump was coaching the people. It was like it was their race. Hey, they're lying to you. That's when he started saying fake news. Right. It's all fake. These polls are fake. We're ahead in the polls. We're doing good. We're winning. They're saying we're not. Go out and vote. They're trying to get you to stay at home and vote. And he was right.
Oh, if you want to talk about collusion, there's your collusion right there. There's the collusion. And again, it's the whole.